I got into the wrong Uber. That's how this whole crazy story started. One mistake on a rainy Friday night in Manhattan, and suddenly I was sitting in the back of a luxury SUV being driven to a penthouse I had never heard of, surrounded by men in expensive suits who kept calling me ma'am and asking if I was here for the boss. My name is Riley Martinez. I'm 26 years old, and I work as a graphic designer for a small marketing agency in New York. Or at least I did before that wrong Uber ride changed absolutely everything about my life. Let me start from the beginning, because none of this makes any sense without context. It was Friday, October 13th. I had stayed late at work finishing a project for a demanding client. By the time I left the office, it was pouring rain and I was exhausted. I ordered an Uber to take me home to my apartment in Brooklyn. The app said my driver would arrive in 3 minutes. Black SUV, license plate JTH 4892. I stood under the awning of my office building, watching the rain come down in sheets. When a black SUV pulled up to the curb, I didn't look at the license plate. I just ran out into the rain, yanked open the back door, and climbed in. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was not noticing immediately that this SUV was way too nice to be a regular Uber. Leather seats that probably cost more than my rent. A privacy partition between the front and back. Bottles of water and crystal glasses in the cup holders. But I was tired and wet and my phone was dying, so I didn't pay attention. I just slumped into the seat and closed my eyes. The driver didn't say anything. We pulled away from the curb. It wasn't until we had been driving for about 5 minutes that I realized something was wrong. I opened my eyes and looked out the window. We were heading toward Manhattan, not Brooklyn. "Excuse me?" I said, leaning forward. "I think you're going the wrong way. My apartment is in Brooklyn." The driver didn't respond. There was a man in the passenger seat who I hadn't noticed before. He turned around to look at me. His face was hard, professional. "Ma'am," he said, "we're taking you to Mr. Ashford's residence, as requested." "Who's Mr. Ashford?" I asked. "I didn't request anything. I ordered an Uber to Brooklyn. You're not my driver." The man exchanged a glance with the driver. Then he said, "Ma'am, you got into our vehicle. We assumed you were the 9 p.m. appointment." "I'm not anyone's appointment," I said, my heart starting to race. "This is a mistake. I got into the wrong car. You need to let me out." "We're on the highway, ma'am," the man said. "We can't let you out here. We'll take you to Mr. Ashford's residence and sort this out there." "I don't want to go to anyone's residence," I said. My voice was getting louder. "I want to go home. Turn this car around right now." The man remained calm. "Mr. Ashford doesn't appreciate people being late for appointments. We're already on our way. You can explain the situation to him when we arrive." I pulled out my phone to call 911, but my battery was at 2%. Before I could dial, it died. No, I muttered, trying to turn it back on. Nothing. "Ma'am," the man said, "I can see you're distressed, but I assure you you're not in danger. We're simply taking you to Mr. Ashford's penthouse. Once we arrive, we can clarify this misunderstanding." I had no choice. I was in a moving car on a highway with 2 strange men who seemed to think I was supposed to be there. All I could do was sit back and try not to panic. We drove for another 15 minutes, heading into the most expensive part of Manhattan. The buildings here were the kind you see in magazines. Doormen in uniforms, lobbies with marble floors, the kind of places where monthly rent was more than I made in a year. The SUV pulled up to a building that was somehow even more impressive than the others. The entrance was understated but clearly exclusive. 2 more men in suits stood outside. The SUV stopped and the passenger door opened. One of the suited men appeared at my door. "Ma'am," he said, "please come with us." "Where are we?" I asked. "Mr. Ashford's residence," the man said. "He's expecting you." "I'm not whoever you think I am," I said, but I got out of the car because what else was I going to do? The men escorted me into the building. The lobby was stunning, all white marble and modern art. A woman at the front desk looked up as we passed, her eyes widening slightly when she saw me. We went to a private elevator. One of the men used a key card to call it. The doors opened and we stepped inside. There were only 2 buttons. Lobby and penthouse. The man pressed penthouse. As we rode up, I tried to explain again. "Look," I said,
My name is Riley Martinez. I'm a graphic designer. I ordered an Uber to go home from work, and I accidentally got into your car. This is all a huge mistake." The men didn't respond. The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment. And when I say apartment, I mean a space that was bigger than my entire apartment building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, art on the walls that I recognized from auction house catalogs.
A man was standing by the windows. He turned when he heard the elevator. It was probably in his early 30s, tall, wearing an expensive suit without a tie, dark hair, sharp features, the kind of face that belonged on the cover of Forbes magazine, which, I would later learn, it had been. "Ma'am," one of the suited men said to him, "the 9 p.m. appointment has arrived." The man looked at me. His expression was hard to read. Surprise, maybe? Or confusion. "You're late," he said. His voice was cold. I don't tolerate lateness. "I'm not your appointment," I said. "I don't know who you think I am, but I got into the wrong car. This is a huge misunderstanding." The man's eyes narrowed. He walked closer to me. He was intimidating up close, not because he was threatening, but because he had this aura of power and control. "Explain," he said. "My name is Riley Martinez," I said. "I work at a marketing agency in Midtown. I ordered an Uber to go home tonight, and I accidentally got into your car instead. Your men thought I was someone you were expecting, but I'm not. I'm just someone who made a mistake." The man studied me for a long moment. Then he turned to one of his men. "Who was the 9 p.m. appointment?" "A potential personal assistant, sir," the man said, "from the agency. A woman in her mid-20s with design experience. We were given a photo, but it was unclear." "I do have design experience," I said, "but I didn't apply for any job. This is just a coincidence." The man turned back to me. "What's your name again?" "Riley Martinez," I said. "Mr. Ashford," one of his men said, "should we verify her identity?" "Do it," the man said. Then he looked at me. "You'll wait here." One of the men pulled out a phone and walked away, presumably to check my story. I stood there in this ridiculous penthouse, dripping on what was probably a priceless rug, wondering how my life had become so surreal in the span of 30 minutes. "Can I at least know your name?" I asked the man, "since your people kidnapped me and all." "I'm Alexander Ashford, and you weren't kidnapped. You got into my car voluntarily." "Because I thought it was my Uber," I said. Alexander Ashford. Why does that name sound familiar? "You've probably seen it in the news," Alexander said. He didn't sound boastful, just stating a fact. "I own Ashford Enterprises. We're in tech, real estate, finance." I felt my stomach drop. Ashford Enterprises was one of the biggest companies in the world. I had seen articles about Alexander Ashford. Billionaire, genius, ruthless businessman. And I had just accidentally gotten into his car. "Oh my God," I said. "Oh my God. You're that Alexander Ashford? The one who bought that social media company last year. The one who's always on the cover of business magazines." "Is this a problem?" Alexander asked. "Yes," I said. "No. I don't know. I just accidentally infiltrated a billionaire's private car service. This is the weirdest night of my life." One of the men came back. "Her story checks out, sir. Riley Martinez, 26, graphic designer at Morrison Creative Agency. Lives in Brooklyn. No criminal record, no connection to anyone in your world. Just a case of wrong car, wrong time." Alexander looked at me again. This time his expression had shifted slightly. Still unreadable, but maybe less hostile. "You really did just get into the wrong car," he said. "I really did," I confirmed. "So, can I go home now?" "There's a problem," one of the men said. "What problem?" Alexander asked. "The weather," the man explained. The storm has gotten worse. Flooding in several areas, subways shut down, rideshare services are suspended. It's not safe to send her back to Brooklyn tonight." Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She'll stay here." "What?" I practically shouted. "I'm not staying here. I'll walk home if I have to." "You're not walking anywhere in this storm," Alexander said. "Marcus, prepare one of the guest rooms." "Sir," one of the men said, "is that wise? We don't know her." "We know enough," Alexander said. "She's not a threat. She's just someone who made a mistake. She'll stay tonight and leave in the morning." And with that, he walked away toward another room, leaving me standing there with his security team. "This is insane," I said to no one in particular. "Ma'am," the man named Marcus said, "if you'll follow me, I'll show you to your room." What choice did I have? I followed Marcus through the penthouse. The guest room he showed me was bigger than my entire apartment. King-size bed, private bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people, and a closet full of designer clothes in various sizes. "There are clothes if you need to change. Dinner will be served in an hour if you're hungry. Mr. Ashford requests your presence." "He requests my presence?" I repeated. "I'm not a guest. I'm an accidental intruder." "Nevertheless," Marcus said, "dinner is at 8:30. After Marcus left, I sat on the bed and tried to process what was happening. I had gotten into the wrong car and ended up in a billionaire's penthouse. I was apparently spending the night here, and I was expected to have dinner with Alexander Ashford, one of the most powerful men in New York. I looked down at my work clothes. They were wet from the rain and wrinkled from a long day. In the closet, I found a simple black dress that looked like it might fit. Against my better judgment, I changed into it. It fit perfectly. At 8:30, I emerged from the guest room. Marcus was waiting in the hallway. He led me to a dining room that was somehow even more impressive than the rest of the penthouse. A table set for 2. Alexander was already there, now wearing different clothes. More casual but still expensive. "You didn't have to change," he said when he saw me. "I was wet," I said. "And your closet has more clothes than a department store. Who are they for?" "Previous guests," Alexander said. "I entertain occasionally." We sat down. Staff that I hadn't seen before brought out food. Actual courses. Salad, soup, some kind of fish that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "This is weird," I said, after a few minutes of awkward silence. "You're having dinner with someone who accidentally broke into your life. Why aren't you angry?" "I was angry," Alexander said. "When you were late, I assumed it was another flaky applicant wasting my time. Then when you turned out to be the wrong person entirely, I was annoyed at the incompetence. But now I'm mostly just curious." "Curious about what?" I asked. "About you," Alexander said. "You accidentally got into a billionaire's car, got driven to his penthouse, and your reaction wasn't to be impressed or try to take advantage. You just wanted to go home." "Because this isn't my world," I said. "I don't belong here. I belong in my tiny apartment with my rescue cat and my student loan debt." Alexander almost smiled. Almost. "Tell me about your work," he said. "Why?" I asked. "Because we're having dinner," Alexander said, "and I'd rather talk than sit in silence." So I told him. I explained that I worked at a small marketing agency doing graphic design for various clients, that I had studied design in college and graduated with massive debt, that I loved what I did, but the pay was barely enough to survive in New York, that I had dreams of starting my own design studio someday, but it seemed impossible given my financial situation. Alexander listened, really listened. He asked questions that showed he actually understood design and branding and creative work. For someone known for being ruthless in business, he was surprisingly easy to talk to. "What about you?" I asked. "What's it like being a billionaire?" "Lonely," Alexander said. It was such an honest answer that I was taken aback. "People want things from me," he continued. "Access to my money, my connections, my influence. Real conversations are rare. Everyone is performing, trying to impress me or manipulate me. So you surround yourself with security and live in a tower, I said, like a modern-day king. Alexander looked at me. Something in his expression shifted. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "Should I be?" I asked. "Most people are," Alexander said, "at least intimidated. But you've been talking to me like I'm a normal person." "You are a normal person," I said. "You just happen to have a lot of money." We finished dinner, and Alexander surprised me by suggesting we watch a movie. "I don't usually do this," he said, "but since you're here and the storm isn't letting up, we might as well make the evening less awkward." We watched a movie in a home theater that was nicer than most actual movie theaters. Sometime during the second half, I fell asleep. I was exhausted from work and the stress of the evening. When I woke up, I was in the guest room bed, still in the borrowed dress. Someone had carried me there, probably Marcus. It was Saturday morning. I got up and found my own clothes, now dry and folded neatly on a chair. I changed and went out to find Alexander. He was in the kitchen, making coffee. "You're up," he said. "Coffee?" "Please," I said. We sat at the kitchen counter. In the morning light, Alexander looked different, less intimidating, more human. "About last night," I started. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience." "You're not an inconvenience," Alexander said. "You're actually the most interesting thing that's happened to me in months." "I don't know if that's a compliment or a sad commentary on your life," I said. "Both," Alexander admitted. Then he said something that changed everything. "I want to offer you a job." "What?" I asked. "The position you accidentally showed up for," Alexander explained. "Personal assistant. It's not what it sounds like. I need someone to help manage my personal brand, handle some creative projects, coordinate with my PR team. Someone with design skills and the ability to think independently." "I have a job," I said, "and I don't know anything about being a personal assistant to a billionaire. The pay is $300,000 a year, plus benefits, a company car, and you'd work directly with me." I stared at him. "That's more than 5 times what I make now." "Exactly," Alexander said. "And before you ask why I'm offering this to you, it's because you're the first person in years who's talked to me like I'm a human. You didn't try to impress me or use me. You were just yourself. I need that kind of authenticity around me." I spent the next 48 hours rebuilding the presentation from scratch. I kept the data, but I added narrative. I created visuals that told a story about where Ashford Enterprises had been and where it was going. I made it human, emotional, compelling. When I showed it to Alexander, he stared at the screen for a long time. "This is better," he finally said. "Much better. We're using this." Robert was furious. He complained to Alexander that I was overstepping, that I was too inexperienced, that I was making the company look unprofessional by having a junior assistant redesign major presentations. Alexander called me into his office after one of these complaints. "Robert thinks I'm making a mistake keeping you involved in high-level projects," Alexander said. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think Robert is threatened because you're better at this than he is," Alexander said. "But I need you to understand something, Riley. Working for me means dealing with people who don't respect you because of your age or your lack of pedigree. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared to prove them wrong," I said. "Good," Alexander said. "Because that presentation you made, we used it in the investor meeting this morning. We secured $200 million in funding. The investors said it was the most compelling pitch they had seen all year." From that point on, I had Alexander's full confidence, but I also had made an enemy in Robert. He started excluding me from meetings, undermining my work, making comments about me being Alexander's pet project. It came to a head about 2 months in. Robert sent out a company-wide email questioning why resources were being wasted on a personal assistant with no business experience. He didn't mention me by name, but everyone knew who he meant. I was mortified. I offered to resign, but Alexander wouldn't hear of it.
He called an executive meeting and addressed the situation directly. Riley Martinez has contributed more to this company in 2 months than some people have in years, Alexander said. Her work led to our most successful investor pitch in company history. She's redesigned our entire approach to brand management. And she's done it while being undermined by people who feel threatened by her talent. This ends now. Either you work with Riley or you work somewhere else. Robert quit that same day. Several other executives who had been cold to me suddenly became friendly. It was a clear message. Alexander valued me, and anyone who had a problem with that could leave. But the victory felt hollow. I hadn't wanted to cause division in the company. I just wanted to do good work. That night, Alexander found me working late in my office. "You're upset about Robert," he said. "I caused a senior executive to quit," I said. "That's not great for my first 2 months." "Robert caused Robert to quit," Alexander corrected. "He couldn't handle being wrong. That's not your fault." "I just feel like I'm disrupting your company," I said. "You are disrupting my company," Alexander said. "That's exactly what I need. This place has been running on autopilot for too long. You're pushing people to do better work. That disruption is a good thing." About a month in, I was working late in my new office next to his. Everyone else had gone home. Alexander appeared in my doorway. "You're still here," he said. "So are you," I pointed out. "I'm always here," Alexander said. "But you don't have to be." "I want to finish this presentation for your meeting tomorrow," I said. "It's not quite right yet." Alexander came over and looked at what I was working on. He suggested a few changes. We ended up working together for another hour, refining the presentation until it was perfect. These late nights became a pattern. We would work until 8 or 9, then order dinner and eat in one of our offices. The conversations would start about work, but drift to other topics. Books we had read, places we wanted to travel, our childhoods, our fears. I learned that Alexander had grown up wealthy, but isolated. His parents were rarely around, always traveling for business or pleasure. He had been raised mostly by nannies and tutors. He learned early that people liked him for his family's money, not for himself. "So I built my own empire," Alexander told him one night. "Something that was mine, not inherited. Something I could control." "But then you ended up just as isolated as you were as a kid," I said. Alexander looked at me. "You're the first person to make that connection." He started asking me personal questions about my family, my dreams, my fears. I told him about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about my parents who worked multiple jobs to afford to send me to design school, about my fear that I would never be successful enough to pay them back for their sacrifices. "You already have," Alexander said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You're living the life they wanted for you," Alexander said. "You're in New York, working in your field. You're talented and successful. That's what parents want. Not money, but knowing their kids are okay." I had never thought of it that way. 4 months into the job, Alexander's ex-fiancée showed up at the office. I didn't know who she was at first, just a beautiful woman in an expensive suit asking to see Alexander. Victoria tried to turn her away, but the woman pushed past and went straight to Alexander's office.
I heard raised voices. Then I heard something crash. I went to Alexander's door and knocked. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "We're fine," Alexander said. His voice was tight. "Riley, this is Vanessa Beaumont, my ex-fiancée." Vanessa looked at me with cold eyes. "So, this is the new assistant," she said. "How original, Alexander. Bringing in a young, pretty thing to follow you around." "I'm not a thing," I said, "and I'm here because I'm good at my job." Vanessa laughed. "Of course you are. I'm sure your skills are very impressive." I could feel my face getting hot. But before I could respond, Alexander spoke. "Vanessa, you need to leave. Now. We have nothing to discuss." "We have plenty to discuss," Vanessa said. "Like the fact that you're embarrassing yourself with this girl. People are talking, Alexander. They're saying you've lost your edge, that you're distracted." I don't care what people are saying, Alexander said. And Riley is not a distraction. She's the best hire I've made in years. Now leave or I'll have security escort you out. Vanessa left, but not before giving me one last cold look. After she was gone, Alexander sat down at his desk. He looked tired. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said. She seems pleasant, I said, sarcastically. She was different when I met her, Alexander said. Or maybe I was just too young to see who she really was. What happened between you two? I asked. I proposed, Alexander said. She said yes. Then I found out she had been feeding information about my business deals to her father's company, using our relationship to gain competitive advantage. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. She said that's how the game is played. So you ended it? I said. I ended it, Alexander confirmed. But she's been trying to get back together ever since. She claims she's changed, that she really loved me, but I can't trust her. Trust is everything, I said. Exactly, Alexander said. And you're one of the few people I do trust. That conversation marked a shift in our relationship. Alexander started sharing more with me, not just work things, but personal things. His frustrations with his family, his worries about the company, his fear that he would never have a normal relationship because of his wealth. And I found myself opening up to him too, about my insecurities working in his world, about missing my old life sometimes, about wondering if I was cut out for this level of pressure and responsibility. One night, about 5 months in, we were having one of these late dinners when Alexander asked me something unexpected. Do you ever regret taking this job? He asked. Why would I asked. You left your old life behind, Alexander said. Your friends from before, your simple routine, your independence. I see how hard you work. Sometimes I wonder if I'm asking too much. I thought about it. My friendship with Jenna had changed. We barely saw each other anymore because our schedules were so different. My old coworkers from the marketing agency felt like they were from another lifetime. My tiny apartment felt empty because I was never there. But no, I said, I don't regret it. This job has challenged me in ways I didn't know I needed. I've grown more in 5 months here than I did in 3 years at my old job. But there's more to life than work, Alexander said. When's the last time you did something just for fun? I could ask you the same question, I pointed out. Alexander smiled. Fair. We're both terrible at balance. Maybe we should fix that, I suggested. How? Alexander asked. Take a day off, I said. Both of us. This weekend. We'll do something that's not work-related. No phones, no emails, no business. Just exist as people for 24 hours. What would we do? Alexander asked. I don't know, I admitted. What do normal people do on weekends? We could go to a museum, Alexander suggested. For fun, not for a networking event. Radical concept, I said. That Saturday, we went to the Museum of Modern Art. Just the two of us, no security detail following us around for once. We spent hours looking at art, debating what we liked and didn't like. Alexander had strong opinions about abstract expressionism. I loved the surrealists. We got into a friendly argument about whether Jackson Pollock was a genius or a charlatan. Genius, Alexander insisted. The chaos has structure if you look closely enough. I think he was making fun of people who overanalyze art, I countered. Sometimes a paint splatter is just a paint splatter. We grabbed hot dogs from a street vendor for lunch. Alexander admitted he couldn't remember the last time he had eaten street food. We walked through Central Park, and I made him take a selfie with me, even though he hated photos. This is nice, Alexander said at one point. Being normal. You're not normal, I pointed out. You're a billionaire. but you can have normal moments. That day was a turning point. We both realized that we enjoyed each other's company outside of work, that we made each other laugh, that we could be ourselves around each other in ways we couldn't with anyone else. But I was still his employee. There was still a power dynamic. And I was very aware that people were watching us, making assumptions about our relationship. 6 months in, those assumptions became a real problem. A gossip website published an article speculating that Alexander and I were having an affair. They had photos of us leaving the office together late at night, photos from our museum trip, photos that were completely innocent but could be interpreted as something more. I was mortified. My parents called me worried. My friends asked if it was true. Even Jenna, who knew me better than anyone, asked if something was going on. Nothing is going on, I told her. We're just boss and employee. But are you sure that's all it is? Jenna asked. Because the way you talk about him, Riley, it doesn't sound like just a job. I didn't know how to answer that. Because the truth was, I had developed feelings for Alexander. Real feelings. But I had been trying to ignore them because the situation was impossible. He was my boss. He was a billionaire. We lived in completely different worlds. Alexander addressed the gossip directly in a company meeting. There have been rumors about my relationship with Riley Martinez, he said. I want to be clear that Riley is my employee. She was hired based on her exceptional skills. Any suggestion otherwise is false and disrespectful to her professional achievements. I appreciated him defending me, but I also couldn't help feeling disappointed, because him declaring that we were just boss and employee felt like closing a door I had secretly hoped might open. That night, 3 of Alexander's men asked if I was here for the boss. I realized something had been building between us, something neither of us had acknowledged. 3 months after our first date, we attended a company gala together. It was the first time we appeared publicly as a couple. The media coverage was intense. Half the articles were supportive, calling us a modern love story. The other half were cruel, calling me a gold digger, suggesting I had manipulated my way into Alexander's life. One particularly nasty article claimed I had deliberately gotten into his car that night as part of an elaborate scheme to trap a billionaire. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. Alexander found me crying in my office, reading the comments on the article. "Don't read that garbage," he said, taking my phone away. "They don't know you." "I know," I said, "but it still hurts. They're making me sound like a con artist." "Which you're not," Alexander said firmly. "You got into the wrong car by accident. I pursued you, not the other way around. And anyone who actually knows you knows you're with me because of who I am, not what I have." "How can you be so sure?" I asked. "Because you argued with me about taking this job," Alexander said. "Because you still pay your own rent even though I've offered to help. Because you refuse to let me buy you things. Because when we go out, you want to go to diners and food trucks, not Michelin star restaurants. You're the least materialistic person I've ever met." That made me feel better, but it also highlighted the challenges we faced. Our relationship was constantly being scrutinized, analyzed, judged by people who didn't know us. The thing that bothered me most was that some of my own insecurities matched what the articles were saying. Was I really good enough for Alexander? Did I deserve this life? Or was I just lucky that I got into his wrong car that night? Alexander sensed my doubts. One night, about 4 months into our relationship, he sat me down for a serious conversation. "I need you to know something," he said. "What?" I asked. "I didn't fall for you because you're beautiful or charming or any of the surface things," Alexander said. "I fell for you because you're honest, because you challenge me, because you make me want to be better than I am. You see me as a person, not as an opportunity. That's rare. That's everything." "But what if the circumstances were different?" I asked. "What if we had met at a coffee shop like normal people? Would you even have noticed me?" "Honestly, probably not," Alexander admitted. "I don't go to coffee shops. I don't meet people organically. My entire life is scheduled and controlled. If you hadn't gotten into my car that night, we never would have met." "So our relationship only exists because of that accident," I said. "Yes," Alexander said. "But Riley, all relationships exist because of accidents and timing. People meet because they happen to be in the same place at the same time. Our accident was just more dramatic than most. I thought about that. He was right. There was nothing wrong with how we met. It was just different. 5 months into our relationship, Alexander had to go to London for business. A week-long trip full of meetings and negotiations. He asked me to come with him. "This isn't a work trip for you," he clarified. "I want you there because I want you there." So I went. We stayed at a beautiful hotel overlooking the Thames. Alexander had meetings during the day, but we spent evenings exploring the city, walking along the South Bank, visiting the Tate Modern, having dinner at small restaurants in Soho. One night, we were having dinner at a pub when Alexander got recognized. A group of business students asked for photos. Alexander was gracious, talking to them about entrepreneurship and giving advice. I watched him interact with them and saw a side of him I didn't often see. The mentor, the person who had wisdom to share. After they left, I told him what I had observed. "You're good at that," I said, "inspiring people. Have you ever thought about teaching or speaking more?" "I don't have time," Alexander said, "but also I'm not sure what I would teach." "Everything," I said. "You've built multiple successful companies. You understand business at the highest level. People would pay to learn from you." Alexander looked thoughtful. "Maybe when I'm older," he said. "Right now I'm focused on building, but someday maybe I'll shift to sharing what I've learned." That night in our hotel room, Alexander told me he loved me. It was the first time either of us had said it. "I love you too," I said, and I meant it completely. But I also felt scared, because loving someone meant they could hurt you, and Alexander had the power to hurt me more than anyone ever had. 6 months into our relationship, we had our first real fight. It started over something small. I wanted to visit my parents in Oregon for Thanksgiving. Alexander wanted me to come with him to his family's house in the Hamptons. "You could come to Oregon with me," I suggested. "Meet my parents." Alexander's face closed off. "I don't do family holidays," he said. "But you want me to do yours?" I asked. "It's different," Alexander said. "My family is difficult. Yours actually likes each other." "So you get to avoid your family, but I have to abandon mine?" I asked. "I'm not asking you to abandon them," Alexander said. "Go see them. I'll go to the Hamptons. We'll meet up after." "So we spend our first major holiday apart," I said. "That's your solution?" Alexander got frustrated. "Riley, you don't understand. My family is not warm and welcoming like yours. My mother will spend the entire time criticizing me. My father will turn everything into a business conversation. My siblings will compete for attention. It's exhausting." "So bring me," I said. "I'll be your buffer." Alexander shook his head. "I don't want to subject you to that." "Which means you don't want me to see that part of your life," I said. "You want to keep us separate." "That's not fair," Alexander said. "I just want to protect you." "From your family?" I asked, "or from seeing how dysfunctional things really are?" We argued for another hour. Eventually, I went home angry and hurt. We didn't talk for 2 days. It was the longest we had gone without communication since we started dating. Finally, Alexander showed up at my apartment. "I'm sorry," he said as soon as I opened the door. "You were right. I was keeping you separate from that part of my life, but not because I don't want you there, because I'm ashamed of how broken my family is. I don't want you to see it and think less of me." "I could never think less of you," I said, "but I need you to let me in, all the way, not just the parts you're proud of." Alexander nodded. "Come to the Hamptons with me," he said. "Meet my family. See how messy it is. And then we'll figure out what to do about it together." We went to the Hamptons for Thanksgiving. Alexander's family was exactly as he described. His mother, Patricia, was cold and critical. His father, Richard, only talked about business and money. His 2 siblings, Catherine and James, spent the entire time trying to outdo each other. The whole day was uncomfortable, but I understood Alexander better after seeing where he came from, why he built walls around himself, why trust was so hard for him. On the drive back to the city, I took his hand. "Thank you for letting me see that," I said. "It wasn't pleasant," Alexander said. "No," I agreed, "but it was honest, and that matters more."
After that fight, our relationship deepened. We stopped holding back. We talked about everything: our fears, our hopes, our insecurities. 7 months into our relationship, I got an email from a design firm I had admired for years. They had seen my work on some of Alexander's projects and wanted to offer me a job, head of creative, double my current salary. It was an incredible opportunity. I showed the email to Alexander. "You should take it," he said immediately. "What?" I asked. "I don't want to leave Ashford Enterprises." "This is an amazing opportunity," Alexander said. "Working with one of the top design firms in the world. You'd be leading their creative direction. This is what you've always wanted." "But I like working with you," I said. "Riley," Alexander said gently, "you can't stay at Ashford Enterprises forever just because we're dating. You have your own career to build. If this is the right move for you professionally, you should take it." I thought about it for a week. The design firm was prestigious. The work would be challenging. It would establish me as a leader in my field. But it also felt like stepping backward, away from Alexander, away from the life we were building together. I turned down the job. Alexander was upset when I told him.
"That was a mistake," he said. "That was my career choice," I countered. "I get to decide what opportunities I take." "But you're limiting yourself," Alexander said. "You're staying in a position beneath your capabilities because of our relationship." "That's exactly what people accused me of," I said, "using you to advance my career. Now you're upset that I'm not advancing my career enough?" "It's different," Alexander said. "This is you holding yourself back." "Maybe I don't want to work for someone else," I said. "Maybe I want to build something of my own." "So build it," Alexander said. That's when I realized what I actually wanted. Not to work for a design firm, even a prestigious one. I wanted to start my own studio, to work with clients I believed in, to build something from scratch like Alexander had. I started making plans. Quietly at first, just sketching out ideas. But then I began researching what it would take to start a design studio. The costs, the logistics, the business structure. It was overwhelming. The startup costs alone were more than I had saved. Renting studio space in New York was expensive. Buying equipment, hiring help, marketing to find clients. It would take years to save enough money. Unless I asked Alexander for help. But that felt wrong. Like I would be using him, like people accused me of doing. I struggled with this for months. Should I ask for help? Should I wait and save money myself? Should I abandon the dream entirely? 8 months into our relationship, Alexander noticed I was distracted. "What's going on?" he asked. "I'm thinking about starting my own design studio," I admitted, "but the startup costs are beyond what I can afford, and I don't want to ask you for money because then people will say I'm using you." "So ask me for a loan," Alexander said. "A proper business loan with a contract and interest and terms. That way, it's not charity, it's an investment." I hadn't thought of that. A business loan would mean I was building something legitimate, not just taking handouts. I worked with Alexander's legal team to draw up a proper loan agreement, market rate interest, payment schedule, all the terms that would apply if I was borrowing from a bank. Alexander loaned me $200,000 to start my studio. 9 months into our relationship, I signed a lease on a space in Soho. It had huge windows and exposed brick walls. Room to grow. I bought equipment, hired an assistant, built a website, started reaching out to potential clients. The first few months were slow. I had a few small projects, but nothing major. I started to worry that I had made a mistake, that I wasn't cut out to run my own business. Then I got my first big client, a tech startup that wanted comprehensive branding. They chose me over bigger, more established firms because they liked my vision. That project led to others. Within 6 months, my studio was profitable. Within a year, I had hired 2 more people. I was building something real, something mine. A year after getting into that wrong Uber, Alexander took me back to his penthouse, the same one where our story had really started. He had recreated that rainy Friday night. There was even a fake Uber sign.
"This is ridiculous," I said, laughing. "I wanted to recreate the moment my life changed," Alexander said. "The night I met someone who saw me as a person, not a portfolio. Someone who argued with me and challenged me and made me want to be better." Then he got down on one knee. "Riley Martinez, you got into the wrong car and ended up in my life. Will you make it permanent? Will you marry me?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Yes," I finally managed to say. "Obviously, yes." We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony in the Hudson Valley. My parents cried. Alexander's mother looked uncomfortable the entire time. But we didn't care. We were building our life, not performing for anyone else. The first year of marriage was an adjustment. We had to figure out how to be partners in every sense, not just romantically, but financially, professionally, in every way. We decided to keep our finances mostly separate. I wanted to maintain independence. Alexander understood. We split household expenses proportionally to our incomes, which meant he paid significantly more, but it felt fair. My design studio continued to grow. I hired more staff, took on bigger clients, won awards. I was building something real, something mine. 3 years after that wrong Uber ride, I was featured on a list of influential young designers. The article focused on my work, not on who I was married to. That meant everything to me. Alexander was incredibly supportive. He would brag about my accomplishments to anyone who would listen. He came to my studio openings. He was my biggest fan. And I was his. I watched him shift from being just a businessman to being someone who thought about legacy and impact. He started a foundation that funded design education for underprivileged kids. He said I inspired it. 4 years after that night, we had our first real crisis as a couple. One of the tabloids published an article claiming I had married Alexander for his money and was now having an affair.
It was completely false. The photos they used as evidence were from a business lunch with a client. But the article went viral. People who didn't know us believed it. Alexander's family, particularly his mother, called to express concern. Some of his business associates started treating me differently. I was devastated. I had worked so hard to prove I wasn't a gold digger, and now people were saying I was also a cheater. Alexander handled it perfectly. He immediately released a statement calling the article false and defamatory. He threatened to sue. He made it clear to everyone that he stood by me completely. But the damage was done. I couldn't go anywhere without people staring. The comments on my studio's social media were brutal. I started having panic attacks. For the first time, I wondered if being married to Alexander was worth all this scrutiny. "I love you," Alexander said one night when he found me crying. "But if this is too much, if you want a different life, I understand." "I'm not leaving you," I said, "but I need you to understand how hard this is. Being constantly judged, having every mistake magnified, never being able to just exist without being watched." "I know," Alexander said, "and I'm sorry. I wish I could protect you from it." We went to couples therapy to work through it. The therapist helped us develop strategies for handling public scrutiny and protecting our private life. Slowly, I learned to build thicker skin, to care less about what strangers thought, to focus on the people who actually knew me and knew the truth. 5 years after getting into that wrong Uber, we had our first child, a daughter we named Maya. She was perfect, tiny and beautiful and completely ours. Becoming parents changed us both. Alexander became softer, more vulnerable. He would cry holding Maya, overwhelmed with love and fear. I watched him transform from the intimidating billionaire I had first met into a gentle father who sang lullabies and changed diapers and got up for 3 a.m. feedings. I had to learn to balance my studio with motherhood. It was harder than I expected. I felt guilty when I was at work, missing time with Maya. I felt guilty when I was home, not being as productive as I wanted to be. But we figured it out. We hired help, which I had been resistant to at first, but Alexander pointed out that we could afford it, and that having support didn't make us bad parents. It made us smart ones.
6 years after that night, my studio had 15 employees and a waiting list of clients. We had opened a second location in Los Angeles. We were featured in major publications. I had achieved success beyond what I had dreamed when I was working at that small marketing agency. But I also faced new challenges. Managing people was hard. Making tough business decisions was hard. Balancing growth with quality was hard. Alexander helped me think through these challenges. He had decades of business experience, and he shared it generously. But he was careful never to take over, to give advice without making decisions for me. One day, about 7 years after that wrong Uber ride, Maya asked me how Daddy and I met. She was 4 years old and very curious. "I got into the wrong car," I told her. "What?" she asked, confused. "I was trying to go home from work, and I accidentally got into Daddy's car instead of my Uber," I explained. "His security men thought I was there for a meeting, so I ended up at his penthouse by mistake." "That's silly, Mommy," Maya said. It was silly, I agreed, but sometimes the best things happen by accident. "Do you love Daddy?" Maya asked. "Very much," I said. "And I love you too, Bug. Even though you weren't an accident, you were very much on purpose." 8 years after that night, Alexander decided to step back from day-to-day operations at Ashford Enterprises. He was 40 years old and ready to focus on other things: family, philanthropy, teaching. I was proud of him for making that choice. It couldn't have been easy for someone who had built their identity around his company, but he did it. He brought in a new CEO and stepped into more of a chairman role. We had more time together. We took family vacations. We had dinner together most nights. We built the kind of normal family life that neither of us had growing up. 9 years after that rainy Friday night, we were at a gala for Alexander's foundation, the same kind of event where we had first appeared together as a couple years ago. But this time, we were different, more confident, more established, more ourselves. I was wearing a dress I designed myself. Alexander kept telling people about it, proud of my work. At one point in the evening, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Riley Martinez?" "That's me," I said. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said. "I'm a design student and I've been following your career. Your story about starting your own studio while working for your now husband, about maintaining your independence, it really inspired me." "I'm glad," I said. "What's your name?" "Jessica," she said. "I'm graduating next year and I'm terrified about starting my career." "You were scared too?"
Terrified, I admitted. I almost didn't take the job with Alexander because it seemed too big, too far outside my comfort zone. "But you did it anyway," Jessica said. "How?" I realized that staying comfortable wasn't going to get me anywhere, I said. Sometimes you have to say yes to things that scare you, and you have to build something that's yours, not just tie yourself to someone else's success. Jessica thanked me and walked away. Alexander had watched the whole interaction. "You're good at that," he said, "being a mentor." "I learned from the best," I said, squeezing his hand. 10 years after getting into that wrong Uber, we celebrated with a trip back to that rainy street corner where it all began. We stood there with Maya, now 6 years old, and our son James, 2 years old, and we told them the story again. "This is where your mom got into my car by mistake," Alexander said, and everything changed. "I like that story," Maya said. "Me too, Bug," I said. "Me too." Looking back on those 10 years, I sometimes still can't believe how much my life changed from one simple mistake. From struggling to pay rent to running a successful studio. From being alone to being married with 2 kids. From feeling small to feeling capable. But it wasn't just luck. It wasn't just being in the right place at the wrong time. It was also about the choices I made after that accident. Choosing to accept Alexander's job offer even though it scared me. Choosing to work hard and prove myself. Choosing to start my own business instead of staying comfortable. Choosing to be authentic instead of performing for other people's expectations. The wrong Uber brought me to Alexander, but I built my life from there. People ask me sometimes if I believe in fate. If I think that wrong Uber ride was meant to happen. I don't know about fate, but I believe in being open to possibility, in saying yes to opportunities even when they're scary, in building something that's yours, in finding someone who sees you as an equal partner. 11 years after that night, I was invited to speak at a conference for women entrepreneurs. I told my story, the whole story, about the wrong car, the billionaire's penthouse, the job offer, the relationship, the challenges, the growth. After my talk, dozens of women came up to me with questions. How did you maintain your independence? How did you deal with people judging you? How did you build your own success while being with someone so successful? I answered each question honestly. I shared the hard parts, not just the fairy tale version. The fights Alexander and I had about money and power dynamics. The times I wanted to quit because the pressure was too much. The constant work of proving myself. But I also shared the good parts. How Alexander supported my dreams without trying to control them. How we built a partnership based on mutual respect. How I learned that you can be with someone powerful without losing yourself. One woman raised her hand. Her name was Sarah, and she was probably about 25. I'm dating my boss, she said. Everyone at work is gossiping about it. I don't know if I should leave the company or end the relationship. What would you do? I thought carefully before answering. First, I said, is your boss supportive of your career? Does he want you to succeed, or does he want you to be dependent on him? He supports me, Sarah said. He encourages me to take on bigger projects. He's proud when I do well. That's a good sign, I said. The problem isn't dating your boss. The problem is when there's an unhealthy power dynamic. If he was using his position to pressure you or keep you small, that would be a red flag. But what about my career? Sarah asked. Everyone thinks I only have my job because I'm sleeping with him. Then prove them wrong, I said. Do exceptional work. Build your own reputation. And if you need to, leave and build something elsewhere. Show that your success isn't tied to him. I did that. I started my own studio. Now when people look at my work, they see me, not just Alexander's wife. After the conference, I got emails from dozens of women in similar situations. Women dating people with more power. Women trying to build careers while in complicated relationships. Women feeling judged for their choices. I started a mentorship program through my studio. We brought in young women and gave them real projects, real responsibility, real opportunity. We created a space where they could build skills and confidence. Alexander supported it fully. He funded scholarships for women from low-income backgrounds to attend design school. We became partners in creating opportunities for others. 12 years after that wrong Uber ride, Alexander and I renewed our vows. We had been through so much together. We wanted to celebrate that. We stood in front of our friends and family and spoke about what we had learned. Marriage isn't about finding someone perfect, I said. It's about finding someone you can grow with. Someone who challenges you and supports you and sees you clearly. Alexander, you've seen me at my best and my worst. You've celebrated my successes and held me through my failures. You've been my partner in building this weird, wonderful life. Thank you for getting into the wrong car with me. Actually, you got into my car, Alexander said. Everyone laughed. Fine, I said. Thank you for not immediately kicking me out. Alexander spoke next. Riley, he said, you changed my life in ways I didn't know were possible. Before you, I thought success was measured in dollars and deals. You taught me that real success is measured in relationships and impact, and the ability to be yourself. You refused to be impressed by my money. You challenged my assumptions. You made me want to be better. Thank you for taking a chance on the job. Thank you for being brave enough to love me despite how complicated it was. Thank you for building your own life instead of just living in mine." We raised our glasses. Our kids, Maya and James, were there, our friends. Both sets of parents, including Alexander's difficult mother who had slowly warmed to me over the years. This is family, I thought. This is home. 13 years after that night, my studio won a major industry award. Best Design Firm in the Northeast. I stood on stage accepting the award and thanked my team. I did not thank Alexander. This win was mine. But afterward, he hugged me and whispered, "I'm so proud of you. I know this is your achievement. I'm just grateful I get to watch you shine." 14 years after getting into the wrong Uber, Maya was 10 and James was 6. We were a real family now. Chaotic breakfast mornings and homework help and bedtime stories. Alexander coached James's soccer team. I was room parent for Maya's class. We were bizarrely normal despite the money and the public profiles and the unusual origin story. One day, Maya came home from school upset. Her friend had said that her parents only stayed together because of money, that Maya's mom was only with her dad because he was rich. "That's not true," I told Maya. "How do you know?" Maya asked. "Because I chose to be with your dad before I knew how our relationship would go," I said. "I chose him when it was complicated and difficult. I chose him when people judged me. I chose him because I loved him, not because of what he could give me." "But he's given you a lot," Maya pointed out. "My friend says we're rich." "We are fortunate," I corrected. "Your dad works hard and I work hard. And yes, we have resources, but the important things in our life, the love and the family and the values, those don't come from money. Those come from choosing each other every day." Maya seemed satisfied with that answer. 15 years after that rainy Friday night, Alexander and I were preparing for Maya to start high school. We were talking about how to help her navigate the challenges of being the child of wealthy parents. "She's going to face assumptions," I said. "People thinking she doesn't have to work for anything. People either being intimidated by our money or trying to use her to get to it." "So we teach her to be herself," Alexander said, "to build her own identity, to work hard regardless of our financial situation." "Exactly what you did," I said. "You've always built your own success. You never relied on your family's money." "And you," Alexander said, "you insisted on building your own career. Maya is watching both of us. She'll learn by example." We had done our best to keep our kids grounded. They had chores and responsibilities. They had to work for things they wanted. We donated to charity and talked to them about helping others. We wanted them to understand that privilege comes with responsibility. Looking back on 15 years, I'm amazed at how much changed from one simple mistake. But I'm also amazed at how much work it took to build this life. It wasn't just luck or fate or being in the right place. It was choosing to take risks, choosing to work hard, choosing to be authentic, choosing to build something mine while also choosing love. If I could go back and tell my 26-year-old self anything, tired and wet and getting into the wrong car, what would I say? I'd tell her that she's about to be terrified, that she's going to question herself constantly, that she's going to face judgment and criticism and doubt. But I'd also tell her that she's stronger than she knows, that she's capable of building something amazing, that the wrong turn is about to become the best direction she's ever taken. I'd tell her to trust herself, to believe in her talent, to never let anyone make her feel small. And I'd tell her that getting into that wrong Uber, that one mistake on a rainy Friday night, is going to change everything in the best possible way. We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. We honeymooned in Italy, and I spent the whole time sketching designs for my growing studio. 3 years after getting into that wrong Uber, my design studio was profitable and growing. I'd hired 3 employees and had a waiting list of clients. I'd also stepped back from my role as Alexander's assistant, though I still consulted on creative projects for Ashford Enterprises. Alexander and I had bought a brownstone in Brooklyn, insisting that we needed a home that felt normal, not just like a display of wealth. We adopted 2 rescue cats. We hosted Sunday dinners for friends. We built a life that was both extraordinary and ordinary. People still ask me sometimes about how we met, about whether it was fate or coincidence that I got into the wrong Uber that night. I don't know if I believe in fate, I always said, but I believe in wrong turns that lead to right places. I believe in mistakes that turn into opportunities. I believe in being open to the unexpected, because that's what changed my life. Not the money, or the success, or the marriage to a billionaire, but the willingness to say yes to something completely outside my plan. The willingness to take a chance on a strange situation and see where it led. Sometimes the wrong Uber is exactly the right ride. Sometimes the men in suits asking if you're here for the boss are actually leading you toward your future. Sometimes getting lost is how you find yourself. My name is Riley Martinez Ashford. I'm a graphic designer, business owner, and yes, wife to a billionaire. But more than any of that, I'm someone who learned that the best things in life often come from the moments when everything goes wrong. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks, so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.